I need you to think about something for a moment. What if the person you trusted most in the world was playing a game with your heart the entire time you thought you were building something real together? What if every promise about taking things slow, every reason they gave you for waiting, was actually a calculated strategy while they were getting exactly what they wanted somewhere else? My name is Emma, and today on my channel, I'm sharing a story that will make you question everything you think you know about trust, timing, and what it really means to be honest in a relationship. This story involves a woman named Sierra, a man named Marcus, and a choice that destroyed everything. Sierra was 25 years old, working at a marketing firm downtown, and honestly, she was tired. Not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. She'd been through too many relationships that went nowhere, too many men who said one thing and did another. Too many times she'd given her whole self to someone only to have them lose interest once they got what they wanted. So when she met Marcus at a networking event, something felt different. He was 27, worked in finance, had ambition written all over him. He wasn't loud or trying too hard. He actually listened when she talked. He asked her real questions about her dreams, her family, what made her happy. After weeks of surface-level conversations with other guys, Marcus felt like an oasis. But here's the thing about Sierra. She wasn't naive. She'd learned lessons from her past, and she'd developed what she thought was a smart strategy. She decided that with Marcus she would be different. She would make him wait. Not because she didn't want to be with him physically, but because she believed that making him work for it would prove he was serious. That he wouldn't just disappear once he got what he wanted. It seemed logical to her. It seemed like protection. So when Marcus would suggest they go back to her place, or when things would get heated between them, Sierra would gently pull away. She'd tell him that she wanted their connection to be special, that she'd been hurt before by guys who only cared about one thing, and she needed to know he was different. She'd talk about wanting to build something meaningful first, and Marcus listened. He was patient. He planned thoughtful dates. He texted her good morning. He seemed to understand where she was coming from, and honestly, that made Sierra feel even more secure in her choice. She felt like she'd finally figured out the formula for a real relationship. What she didn't know was what she was doing on Tuesday nights when Marcus thought she was at her yoga class. 3 months before meeting Marcus, Sierra had matched with someone on a dating app. His name was Daniel. He was 29, confident in a way that was almost magnetic, and from the very first conversation, he made it clear he wasn't looking for anything serious. Just fun, just chemistry, just seeing where things went without any pressure or expectations. Sierra liked that about him. She liked that there were no games with Daniel, because he was being completely honest about not wanting games. So they'd see each other occasionally, late nights mostly. It was purely physical, purely about excitement and attraction with no emotional entanglement. It was easy because there were no expectations, no future planning, no talks about where things were going. When Sierra met Marcus, she didn't cut things off with Daniel right away. In her mind, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She and Marcus weren't exclusive yet. They hadn't had that conversation. So technically, she was still single, right? She could see whoever she wanted. But here's where Sierra's thinking started to get complicated. And this is where a lot of us can relate to the confusion that happens in those early stages of dating. She convinced herself that she was being smart, strategic, that she was keeping her options open while she figured out what she really wanted. With Daniel, it was just physical release, just scratching an itch. With Marcus, she was building something real. 2 completely different things, 2 completely different boxes in her life. The way she saw it, she wasn't hurting anyone. What Marcus didn't know wouldn't hurt him. And as for Daniel, he'd been clear from the start that he wasn't looking for anything serious. So if she was seeing other people, he probably was too. So for about 6 weeks, Sierra had this whole system worked out. She'd spend her Saturday afternoons with Marcus. They'd go to lunch, take walks in the park, talk about everything from their childhoods to their career goals. She'd come home feeling connected and hopeful about the future. Then on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, she'd tell Marcus she had plans with her friend Taylor, or that she wasn't feeling well, or that she had an early morning at work, and she'd slip away to see Daniel. With Daniel, there was no talking about the future. There was no pretending. It was just 2 people who wanted each other in the moment, and then they'd part ways until the next time. Sierra genuinely believed she was handling everything maturely. She thought she was taking time to figure out what she wanted without rushing into commitment. She thought she was protecting her heart by not diving all the way into Marcus until she was absolutely certain. What she wasn't doing was being honest. And the worst part? When Marcus would bring up physical intimacy, when he'd express frustration about waiting, Sierra had a go-to response. She'd get quiet. She'd look hurt. She'd tell him that she was disappointed he was pushing her, that it made her feel like he only cared about one thing. She'd bring up her ex-boyfriend who'd pressured her, who'd made her feel used, and Marcus would immediately feel terrible. He'd apologize. He'd tell her to take all the time she needed. He'd prove to her that he wasn't like those other guys. Sierra knew exactly what she was doing when she manipulated his guilt. She knew it worked, and she did it again and again. By week 7, Marcus asked her to be exclusive. He said he wanted to make things official. He said he was falling for her and he didn't want to see anyone else. And Sierra said yes. But not before she saw Daniel one more time. She told herself it was closure, that she was saying goodbye to that chapter, that it didn't really count as cheating because they weren't technically exclusive yet, even though they were about to be. Even though Marcus had already asked. Even though she knew what his answer meant to him. She went to see Daniel the night before she and Marcus were supposed to have their exclusivity talk. And the next day, she made it official with Marcus. For the first few weeks after becoming official, everything seemed perfect. Sierra had cut contact with Daniel. Well, mostly. They still followed each other on social media. Sometimes they'd like each other's posts. But that didn't count as anything, right? That was just being friendly. But something shifted inside Sierra once Marcus was officially hers. Suddenly, she started noticing things that bothered her. He'd get excited about a work project and spend more time focused on that than on her. He'd mention wanting to go to a concert with his friends, and she'd feel a flash of resentment that he wasn't suggesting they go together. He seemed happier and more confident, which should have made her happy for him, but instead it made her feel insecure. Because if he was that happy, was he as invested in the relationship as she needed him to be? So Sierra started testing him. She'd show up late to their dates to see if he'd get annoyed or if he'd wait patiently. She'd cancel plans at the last minute to see how much he cared. She'd be distant and cold. And then she'd watch to see if he'd chase her, if he'd fight for her, if he'd prove that she was important enough to fight for. When Marcus got promoted at work, instead of celebrating with him, Sierra started making comments. She'd say things like, "I guess work is more important than us now." Or, "I remember when you used to actually want to spend time with me." When he'd try to reassure her, she'd dismiss it. She'd act like he was being defensive or like he didn't really understand what she was saying. She told herself she was protecting the relationship, that she was making sure he didn't take her for granted, that this was how you kept someone interested. But what she was actually doing was slowly poisoning something that could have been beautiful. Marcus started looking confused when he'd see her, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't understand. He'd ask her what was wrong, and she'd tell him nothing was wrong while clearly being upset. He'd try to plan nice dates, and she'd find reasons to criticize them. He couldn't win. No matter what he did, it wasn't quite enough. Then one day, everything exploded. Marcus came home excited. He'd made a new friend at work, someone he really clicked with. He'd been talking about this person for weeks, saying how great it would be if they could all hang out together. He'd finally invited this friend over for dinner at his apartment. And the friend's name was Daniel. The same Daniel. The Daniel. Sierra's heart stopped when Marcus told her. She felt like the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. In her mind, she immediately started calculating. She started planning. She started thinking about what she could say, how she could explain things, what story she could tell that would make this seem less bad than it actually was. She considered faking being sick that night, but she knew that would just delay things. She knew that eventually Marcus would push for an explanation, and eventually Daniel might say something. She couldn't run from this forever. So she decided to face it. The day of the dinner, Sierra got ready carefully. She put on makeup that made her look confident and put together. She wore the dress that Marcus always complimented. She rehearsed explanations in her head. She planned how she'd act surprised when she saw Daniel, like they barely knew each other. Like maybe they'd crossed paths at some point, but it wasn't significant. She actually thought she could handle this. She actually thought that if she played it perfectly, she could control the narrative. When Daniel walked through the door, he recognized her immediately. And the look on his face, that mixture of amusement and recognition, told her everything. He knew what was about to happen. Sierra tried to act confused when he mentioned knowing her. She laughed it off, suggested maybe they'd run into each other around town. But Daniel wasn't having it. He started talking about the dating app where they'd met. He started mentioning specific things that made it impossible to deny. He mentioned that they'd been seeing each other regularly, and Marcus went very, very quiet. That silence was worse than yelling. That silence was Marcus's heart breaking in real time. When he asked her directly if she'd been with Daniel while they were dating, Sierra went into panic mode. She tried to turn it around on him. She asked him why he was interrogating her like this. She started crying and told him she felt attacked. She accused him of being insecure, of not trusting her, of making something out of nothing. She told him that if he really loved her, he'd trust her and move forward instead of dwelling on things that didn't matter. She reminded him that they weren't exclusive when it happened. But Marcus looked at her with this expression that broke something inside her, because she could see in his eyes that he wasn't angry anymore. He was disappointed. He was sad. He was realizing that the woman he thought he was in love with had been lying to him the entire time. He asked her to leave. He said he needed to think. Sierra expected him to call her within a few days. She expected him to miss her, to realize that whatever happened before they were official shouldn't destroy what they'd built. She expected him to come crawling back, like men usually did. But Marcus didn't call. Instead, he blocked her number. He blocked her on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. When she tried to go to his apartment, she found that her key didn't work anymore. He'd changed the locks. She tried reaching out through mutual friends, but they all suddenly seemed uncomfortable around her. Then she found out why. Marcus had told people. Not to be cruel, but because he was hurt and confused and he needed to process what had happened. And somehow, when your story is told by someone else, it always sounds worse than you think it was. 6 months later, Sierra was at a restaurant when she saw him. Marcus was sitting at a table with a woman. They were laughing. They were sharing food. She was looking at him like he was the most important person in her world. And Sierra realized something devastating. He was better without her. He looked healthier, more confident, more genuinely happy than he'd ever looked when they were together. His career had progressed. He'd grown. He'd become the best version of himself after leaving her. And she was still the same, still playing games, still manipulating, still making excuses. Watching them together, Sierra felt something break inside her, and not in the way she expected. It wasn't jealousy, though there was some of that. It was the realization that she'd destroyed something real because she couldn't stop playing games long enough to actually be real with someone. She'd thought she was so smart, so strategic, so good at protecting her heart. But all she'd really done was protect herself from happiness. And that's what I want to talk about today on my channel, because this story, Sierra's story, it's not unique. It's happening in relationships all around us. Maybe it's happening in your relationship right now. When we decide that we need to play games to keep someone interested, we're not protecting our hearts. We're destroying the very thing we're trying to protect. When we manipulate guilt to control someone's behavior, we're not building trust. We're building resentment. And when we lie about who we are and what we're doing, we're not being strategic. We're being dishonest. The truth is, if someone is going to leave you, they're going to leave you. No amount of games or manipulation or carefully crafted stories is going to change that. But what you can do is build something real, something honest, something worth fighting for. The question isn't how do you keep someone interested? The question is whether you're willing to be real with them so they can make an informed choice about whether they want to be with you. Because in the end, Marcus didn't leave because Sierra saw Daniel. He left because Sierra lied about it. He left because he couldn't trust her anymore. He left because what he thought he had turned out to be something else entirely. Thank you so much for watching another story here on my channel, Mrs. Emma. If you found Sierra's story relatable, or if it made you think about your own relationships, please like this video and let me know in the comments what you think she should have done differently. Share this with a friend who might need to hear it. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the stories I'm sharing, stories that explore the messy, complicated, very real parts of human relationships. I'm Emma, your storyteller, and I'll see you next time.